Welcome to the Listen to Your Footsteps podcast. I'm your host, Choreographing, and this podcast is an extension of my book, also called Listen to Your Footsteps, which is a collection of essays, reflections, and poetry on things like fatherhood, identity and belonging, growing up, creativity, and the lessons learned. The purpose of this podcast is to gain insight and learn from the journeys that others have taken. I explore the worlds of art, culture, design, business, creativity, and life from the perspective of Africans who are contributing to the redefinition of the continent and who we are. So my guest today is Quintus Jansen, a father, a husband, a creative entrepreneur, a choreographer, an event producer, one of those, etc., etc. I see you have two favorite hashtags. So there's the dance guy and the creative guy.
Yes, that's right.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Did you always want to dance?
I did not. I grew up on the Cape Flats, and obviously the environment there wasn't really conducive to building a better future, if I can put it that way. So my mom said, okay, got to get them out of the community. I'm going to let them do something that's a little bit more creative, that's part of your culture, because dancing is really big in Cape Town, where I grew up. And so my mom said, okay, we're going to take you and my older brother, we're going to get you out of the community, you're going to go dancing. So that's how I got into dancing. I was just this obedient, nerdy kid who listened to his mom.
How old are you?
I started when I was 6 years old.
Damn. And that's what? Is that ballroom dancing?
I actually started with street dance, with hip hop and breaking, you know, the typical story of grab your cardboard, tape it together, dance in the corner, and then kind of progress to the ballroom and Latin dancing, because that was still exposing me to the elements, if I can put it that way.
Yeah, because I mean, ballroom dancing fascinates me because it has this, I don't know what the relationship is with, let's call it Southern Africa, because I mean, I grew up in Lesotho, and I know in Lesotho, there was a place, like there's a hall where you could go learn how to ballroom dance.
Yeah.
Not anything else, just ballroom dancing. And within this environment, like the wardrobe and the demeanor when you're doing ballroom dancing, and I mean, I know it's a catch-all for a bunch of different styles.
Yeah.
Versus what it kind of looked like outside. Felt like a real contrast. And I've always wondered what that connection was. Like what's in ballroom dancing that people gravitated towards?
I think that ballroom dancing, from my experience and from what I observe, because I also step away from it a little bit and look at it from an outside perspective, is that it's very physical. So it's great exercise. Obviously, there's music involved, so I enjoy that part. And I think there's a very nice community aspect to it and a relational aspect, because you have to have an extremely intense relationship with the person that you're dancing with if you want to progress. And there's a certain, I mean, it's different when you do it competitively as what I did compared to socially. So I like the intensity of the relationship because you're working together as a team, but you're working towards a common goal. Socially as well, like it connected me to my aunts, my grandmother, my great aunts and that kind of thing, because my mom would drag my brother and I to these dances on a Friday night and we'd connect to everybody. And then culturally, it's quite westernized. I mean, now that I stepped away and just look at it from the outside, it's quite westernized from a European perspective, because obviously that's like where it started and originated. And coming from a colored background, it was this aspirational thing.
Okay.
You know, because it was connected to Europe, which was deemed better and more cultured and that kind of thing. So there's all these different facets that really kind of interested me about it. But ultimately, I would say the first 7-8 years of doing it, I was just being a kid listening to his mom. And then later on, I really thought about, why do I enjoy it? What interests me about it? I mean, there's minor details that really make a huge difference. And mastering the body is one of the most difficult things that you can do. So you have to really apply yourself in order to train and discipline your body in a certain way. So that also intrigued me quite a bit.
Understanding how to, make your body do certain things.
Yeah.
Like as a former athlete, I realize it now that I'm old, and like I'll go to gym and I mean, I haven't been an athlete for over 20 years, at least training consistently.
Yeah. You were a sprinter, right?
Yeah. But there's still a kind of like, you understand the little tweaks. You understand the little pains, the little discomforts, the little comforts.
Yeah.
But that comes from putting a lot of attention into your body and kind of trying to hone it to do the thing that you're looking to do.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I was watching this series on Netflix, Sprint.
I haven't watched it yet, yeah.
And when you see the small details that they train just to run fast, I mean, running is running, right? But the amount of detail of how you bring your foot down, which part of your foot you step on, the angle that you get out of the starting blocks with, all those details make such a huge difference. Now, in dancing, you have multiple partners, if I can put it that way. You have the floor surface. So you move differently on, say, a concrete surface to a wooden surface. Then you have your shoes that you have to, it's one of your tools. You have your dance partner, the female that you would normally dance with. You partner with the music because it has to be a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
So there's and then the space that you're in is also a partner. So you have to consider multiple things instead of, say, a lane, I need to get from A to B. And
I mean, you're saying that, and I'm just thinking, even when you talk about the space, so like energy of space, like, having
100%.
performed like, well, recited poems in front of people, or even speaking in front of people, and you find that the energy in the space can have a big, I mean, at least for me, because I'm sensitive to that type of stuff, has an impact on how I present what I'm presenting.
100%. I mean, part of our competition preparation or performance preparation was actually going into the auditorium that you would, or as you said, performance space, and you would mentally prepare, or you would go online before you've even traveled to the place in order to get a good sense of the space. Because your performance in a more intimate environment compared to, say, a gymnasium, compared to a Royal Albert Hall kind of place that has this history and grandeur to it. So you would prepare differently. Your energy is different because your projection is different. Your focus is different. And all of that needs preparation and repetition with that in mind, so that your desired outcome is exactly what you want it to be. Because dancing is one of those art forms that you create it and it exists, but then it disappears immediately after you've created it. So I think that makes it very difficult to prepare for that. But it also leaves a little bit of improvisation that you need to have when you step into a space, because you can prepare as much as what you want to, but ultimately it's on the day, who's in the room, how it's set up, what the lighting is, all those kind of things that make quite a difference.
This is a slight, well, not veer off, but I mean, I do have things I want to talk about. But when you're dancing, say you're dancing for an artist, a musician, in a live performance, often all the attention is on the artist. And I mean, in my mind, at some stage, I wanted to dance for Janet Jackson. I had illusions of being a dancer.
She's here next month.
Yeah. During kind of what's Rhythm Nation, I actually missed her tour. I think I missed her tour in Germany, early 90s. Keeping the intensity and the energy up, when in reality, the attention is very rarely on you. Is that a thing? It just popped into my head.
Yeah.
Like, I'm thinking, I'm seeing a stage and there are all these dancers on the stage and they are bringing it.
Yeah.
But often, particularly with artists like your Janet Jacksons, back, revealing my age, like Bobby Browns, etc., they also dance. So the attention tends to be
on them. Chris Brown, today's age, for example. I think that, stepping back a little bit, coming back to couple dancing, your approach to dancing with your professional partner compared to when you're just dancing recreationally and socially, your approach is different, right? And I would say it's like running a company. That's why I do a lot of work with corporates, because you see yourself as part of a whole.
Yeah.
And you are adding in your little piece to make the whole thing work as a well-oiled machine. And if you're an artist or a performer, I mean, the drummer's always at the back, right? The guitarist gets all the glory as well from the instrumentalist perspective. And I would say that if you have that mindset that you are adding value, you are adding in your 5 cents to the full value that you're giving the audience or the spectator, I think that is the way that you should approach it. Yeah, you make a difference.
Yeah.
If your energy is low, you can pick up the person who does a bad job.
Absolutely, yeah.
Case in point, Australian break dancer. If you have a bad performance, it stands out a lot more than if you're giving your best and have a good performance. So you would also always think, and then your energy also contributes to the rest of the team. So the artist that's being focused on, the singer, also feeds off your energy. And if your energy is down, it's not creating a good experience for everybody. So that's kind of my approach. It's not everybody thinks about it that way. They're like, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to have fun and that kind of thing. But I was quite analytical in my approach when I started performing on stages and that kind of thing.
So you're going and dancing because mommy said so. So if I'd met you at 13, 14 years old and I said to you, what do you want to be when you grow up? What would your answer have been?
That's when it changed, because I was obedient as a young kid, started doing well and that kind of thing, being diligent. And at about 11, 12, I started traveling a lot more around the country and started noticing girls a lot more. So I was like, this is great. I get to dress up. There's well-groomed girls around. A lot of the guys are gay, so they're not interested in the girls. This makes my odds really good. So I was like, I like the dancing thing. Gets me to travel a little bit, meet different people. It is aspirational. And there's beautiful girls. Great, let me continue with this. So that's when it actually changed, when I started taking it a little bit more seriously. And then when I went at 16 to my first world champs, that's when I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. Because I was exposed to more. So I saw a lot of the people that I competed against, they were traveling to a different country every couple of weeks. They got good sponsors. It was really something that they could express themselves in, grow and develop. And the people that I saw progressing in the field of dancing lived a life that I aspired to. So I was like, okay, if I continue this, I would rather have that than what's behind me. So that's when it changed.
And you had an example of being able to, I guess, build a life out of it.
Yeah.
Because often when you're not exposed and you don't have that access, you can enjoy doing something, but making that transition into this is what I do to look after myself and my family, it becomes very hard when you don't see examples of that.
100%. I mean, I had the choice of going to street dance or ballroom and Latin, because even though I did ballroom and Latin, I still have and had a passion for street dance. So in the late 90s, when I started taking it really seriously, having a career in street dance was not possible in South Africa. It just wasn't feasible. Nowadays, you can be an amapiano dancer and specialize in a certain type of street dance and have a really good career. But back then, not. So I had to make a difficult choice, and then chose ballroom and Latin because there was a path set out instead of having to carve a completely new direction and kind of be a spearhead, if I can put it that way.
Yeah. How do you then kind of build that career? What do you go study? What do you how do you plan? How do you plan for it? It's like you wake up and you go, okay, this is what I want to do. Then what?
Yeah. Well, being a nerd, I went to UCT, and then after first year, I was like, hey, mom, dad, thanks, I'm dropping out. Cheers.
What did you go study?
Accounts. I would have been an accountant, bro. So totally different direction, but I enjoy numbers still, and that helps me my business today. But yeah, it was like, okay, accounts, good, straight down the line. And then I was just like, life's too short, man. I want to, one of my major philosophies in life is be happy. And you've got to be happy every day because you got to enjoy what you're doing every day. And I dropped out of varsity, and then I said, okay, got to get out of Cape Town. I was on the first bus out of Cape Town. Cheers. moved to Joburg for a little bit, and then moved to London for 3 years. So I basically said, I'm going to go live in noodles and candlelight. And I did that for 3 years and just did as much as possible. So there I was exposed to different aspects of performing, different genres of dance. So did ballet, did contemporary, did jazz, all of those things. And I just said, I'm going to explore.
Okay, but let me stop you there. You made it sound so simple. No, I took a bus, Cape Town, Joburg, then I decided to go to London. It's not a simple step.
No. I mean, I had no plan. I knew no one in Joburg.
Coming to Joburg, and then how are you getting to London?
I hustled just to get my ticket money. I had no plan. And then, you do gigs here and there. As I said, you really live on the bare minimum because you pump everything into developing this craft that you want to become exceptional at, right? And so you do all of that. You get the money together. You go to London. I just knew a couple of people that I had met in previous years. Can I crash by you for a few days, a couple of weeks actually? And then you get there and you're like, look, man, can I wash your car? Now, washing cars in London in winter is not fun.
Well, washing cars in the UK, regardless summer or winter, I mean, it's raining up the damn time.
Exactly. So, I mean, I did that. I did people's gardens. I cleaned up beer and vomit at different bars that I had to clean up. So you do whatever it takes. I managed to get a thing where I would, because as I said, I'm quite creative. So I would find creative avenues to earn money. And then I would decorate the dance dresses. And so I would get paid per gross of stones, which is 144 stones. Decorate the girls' dresses. They would give me the designs. I would spend the whole night, live on 3-4 hours sleep in order to earn money and then just make it work. But that's one of the reasons why I only stayed in London for 3 years, because that was enough to sustain you and maybe train in London. But you're competing against people who have backing from the governments and dance organizations because it's a more matured industry. So they're traveling with a physio and a psychologist and the dance coach, and everything's paid for and that kind of thing. And you're competing against that, and you're just on the back of your own slog. So eventually after 3 years, I was like, okay, is the trajectory in the right way? Yes. Is my speed of getting where I want to be enough to get to my goals? I was like, no. So then I had to adapt my goals. Then I had to come back to Joburg. I said, no, Cape Town's not really, even to today, it's not quite where it could be with the talent that lies in Cape Town. So, yeah. So,
I mean, it's interesting because, I mean, we've known each other for a couple of years now. I never realized you're from Cape Town.
Yeah.
In my mind, you're always a Joburg person.
Yeah. I mean, early 2000s. So over 20 years I've been here. Yeah.
Yeah, I've also been here about that time. What's the difference between, so, I mean, you've danced, you also kind of then expanded into choreography. What's the difference in approach and craft? Or what do you have to learn to be able to now see the broader, let's call it the broader package as compared to your role within it?
Good question. So there's different approaches to choreography. So you can do artistic choreography and creative, where you're expressing a certain thing and maybe telling a story, which is like a Gregory Makoma. He would do that kind of thing. And then you get more commercial choreography where it's more entertainment as opposed to art. And it depends on your approach is how you would, or it depends on what the outcome should be is how your approach will be. The transition is, for me, when I started it was never falling out of love with dancing. It was wanting more. Like I like the challenge. So then I would be quite studious about it, and I would sit in rehearsals where I was a dancer and make notes in a physical notebook and say, this is what the choreographer, oh, this is what they're doing with the music. Oh, they're chatting to that person. Let me go in my ear. And I mean, obviously ask for permission. And then they would be designing lighting to bring a certain mood out. So I would be curious about what it takes to be a choreographer. And then when I knew enough, I then made the leap to transition. It was a gradual fade out of dancing, and you do both. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to jump full force into being a choreographer. And that for me was, okay, now I've got to manage people.
Yeah.
And I've got to inspire people and I've got to get them to pull in the same direction. And I think generally it wasn't too difficult a transition, but creatively it's different because you have a certain vision.
Yeah.
But the bodies that you're working with might not be able to do what you ask of it. So it's either drill it into them and make them beat them into submission or adapt your vision so that ultimately what's the end point? If it is entertainment or pushing a certain message, cool. How you get there is irrelevant. You got to get to the end point. So I had to kind of adapt my approach, but it was very systematic and studious.
I mean, I think, I've been a fan of, what's it, So You Think You Can Dance, and particularly early seasons. Like I used to watch it obsessively. And it's just interesting watching, the dynamics. Like you're saying with because they would have choreographers come in to work with these 5 dancers or these 2 dancers and kind of watching in that instance, it was because it's also competition. The choreographer is basically like, you have to get it. But I can imagine other spaces being that much of a dictator doesn't always necessarily work. So like you're saying, sometimes it's about, slightly modifying the vision to ensure that, the bodies that you have are capable of realizing that vision.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a contemporary choreographer and now you've got Twitch, the late Twitch, and he's a street dancer and you've got to do a contemporary piece, he hasn't got the technique to execute what you envision. So you have to adapt and you have to be smart about it. And that's what makes a really good choreographer, is to draw out the best version that person can do while still getting the same result, the message across.
So it's also about understanding people. I remember listening to a podcast years ago, and I actually tried to replicate it to a certain extent when I had a radio show. But the person was interviewing the conductor of a philharmonic orchestra. And the conversation was actually around managing people. Because, you see an orchestra playing and you think of the conductor and all you think is, okay, well, the guy is conducting or the woman's conducting and they are playing. But there's a whole thing behind where it's HR, it's, managing egos, managing it's skills, it's all of those, understanding people's capabilities like you're describing. So to a certain extent, it's actually the same thing with a choreographer, which kind of makes sense why it partly makes sense why you kind of veered into kind of business and leadership and all of these things.
Yeah.
I saw on your LinkedIn profile that you did an MBA.
Yes.
In Chicago.
Yes.
So after just, coming to Joburg and going to London.
Yeah.
How do you get to do an MBA and early? So what, 2012?
Yeah, 2012. Yeah.
Very early the last, say, 7-8 years, MBAs have become all the rage.
Yes.
Now we're shifting to doctorates because it seems everybody has an MBA.
Yeah.
But where were you and what was going on that here you are, you've gone on this journey and you've expanded to kind of producing events, etc., which to me makes sense because what you've talked about in terms of that trajectory, in terms of choreographing a dance troupe, it makes sense that you see what's going on around that and what creates the platform. So expand into that.
Correct. Yeah.
But I'm curious why. What was the motivation?
So I got the opportunity when I was ready to transition from only dancing. When I decided to be a full-time choreographer, I got the opportunity to run a dance studio. It was in the Mall of Rosebank, and that was a business, proper fully-fledged business. And you have to run it like that because if you know rentals in shopping malls, you have to run it like a business. And I felt ill-equipped. So there was a system in place that I could fall into and learn, but I just I made a choice not to be in the entertainment business.
Okay.
I wanted to be in the business of entertainment.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I was dealing with a lot more corporate people and being in meetings and pitches and so forth. And they always see you as the dance guy, and that's why I use that hashtag as a little bit of a joke. And so I decided to do it. My wife and I decided to do it together. It was a 2-year process. They actually had a satellite branch here, so we didn't have to be in Chicago for that longer period of time. We went there for a few week stints at a time. And so graduated that. My wife was 8 months pregnant on our graduation photos. You'll see it there. And the reason for that was because it would have brought me credibility. And I just wanted to equip myself a little bit more and understand a little bit more. Now, informally, I had educated myself, similar to today where we're listening to podcasts, watching videos and so forth. But having that piece of paper really, and going through the process actually, really just taught me a lot more than the actual facts. It was the diligence involved, the sacrifice involved in order to get that piece of paper. And that was the decision behind it, is to be respected a little bit more in order to represent the artists that haven't gone through that process.
So I get the business of entertainment business of entertainment versus entertainment business.
Yeah.
But unpack that a little bit for those listening who don't quite get it.
Yeah. So every artist, I mean, your typical artist, if I would put it that way, is about creating and the artistry and the honing their craft. And they don't necessarily think of what deal am I signing, what recording deal am I signing, how I'm going to sell this piece of art that I've created. And often they get exploited, or there's no thought beyond that specific point in time. And so I said, if I can support that so that they have someone who's working in their best interest to strategically think of their career, to think a little bit more medium to long term, and someone who's equipped and has a passion for them and the industry and growing everybody, the saying of rising tide raises or lifts all boats. So I saw myself as an instrument to be able to help lift the whole industry as opposed to just creating art. And that's why the business of entertainment is the focus on the business aspect where you're negotiating. I find artists are not necessarily as confident in a business scenario compared to when they're creating and speaking about the art that they're creating.
Yeah.
So you need someone there just to back you up and to read between the lines what their facial expressions, body language is saying, and say, I don't think that is the best agreement that we need to, meet on. And also maybe we need a bit more time. And they needed someone to back them up and support them. So that's why I said I'm in the business of entertainment, because it focuses on the negotiating, the contracts, the strategic aspect. And then the entertainment side or the artistic side is more about the actual product or service that's being created. So the listeners understand that.
I mean, I think when you talk about that, for most of us, even those of us who have, say, been educated a bit more in business, it can get complicated. And I mean, I've recently had a conversation with a friend who's been approached. He was approached for, it's a creative project, and he has a story. Let's say he owns a story, and somebody wanted the rights to the story. And so he reached out to me because he's like, well, you're closer to that space. You know about these things. And so when I looked at it, I didn't understand it, but I knew enough to have an uneasy feeling about what I was reading in terms of the proposal that was being presented. And then was able to go to somebody else I know who's well-versed in that space.
Yeah.
And so I recently then had a phone call with this friend of mine again. After, we were WhatsApping each other back and forth, and I was being sent information, and then I was interpreting that information and putting in words that he would get, because, the levels of understanding of that particular sector kind of diminishes as it got closer to him. And so yesterday a couple of days ago, we were then on the phone, and I was kind of talking through all the WhatsApps that I'd sent.
Yeah.
And I imagine, and I know, like, I also have some understanding of the entertainment industry and music and contracts, and I've seen the people get screwed.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just having somebody who can go, do you know what? We don't have enough information. Let's go and get more information rather than just going, let's sign.
Yeah.
Somebody to go, something is putting me off about this. Let's investigate it further.
I agree with that. That's what you need to do. A lot of artists also, I think my perspective is that you need to bet on yourself. So instead of having a finite agreement where you're going to get X for this, if you have a percentage of X and you bet on yourself, because that leaves room for exponential growth, exponential return on what you've invested. And that's something that I've noticed in Africa as a whole in the creative fields, is that we get dictated to by people who come here as to what they think the value of what we produce is. And I think it's starting to change now, and I want to be part of that change where we can say to others, this is what we think we're worth.
But it's also, I mean, it's tied to when you see this as the only opportunity, and therefore it's a lifeline. So you see it as that straw, as you're drowning, that little, that little piece of straw, a stick to kind of grasp onto.
Yeah.
And I mean, I do agree that it's changing as younger generations take greater ownership of what they're doing, but also, so I mean, you guys were having with the producer AOB having a conversation earlier about kind of generational differences and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And you have 2 kids as well, but I look at my son who started creating music on his phone, and creating beats and mixing his beats, and at some stage we were having a conversation, and because I have friends throughout the industry, I'm like, you need to think about this, and there's the business side, and you're selling beats. Like, he'll sell them for, I'm told, please go and get an e-wallet. I sold a beat. And because of my background and because of my knowledge, I'm trying to get him to, follow all of these things and the business of
formalize it almost.
The business of music, right?
Yeah.
And royalties and kind of registration of that and all of these things. And then the one day I realized, I was like, look, he's doing this, and if he's happy with it, cool. And he may decide that that's what he wants to do for work, in inverted commas. He may decide not. It may just be a hobby. And it's cool. So having a conversation, as a record company now, discovering somebody like that, and there are a lot of these kids operate like that, which 100%. Is why places like SoundCloud and Basecamp are huge now. Having a negotiation with somebody like that, where it's like, okay, here's a contract, this is what you get, etc., etc. It's like, well, but I'm fine. If I'm putting it on TikTok and TikTok is giving me money, I'm putting it on YouTube and I've reached the threshold that I'm making money from it, why do I actually need to come to you again?
What do you think the solution would be? It's like maybe scale. It depends on what level. If you're selling 1 or 2 beats, or you're selling 100 beats, or you're selling 1,000 or 1,000,000, I think at a different scale, a different level, you would probably need to up your game.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's about one of my favorite words is deliberate. So it's about being deliberate with what it is you're looking to achieve. So, like, for example, personally, I'm at a stage in my life where I'm not interested in scaling. There's been all this talk about scaling, whatever you do, scaling. Like, I'm really not, I'm not trying to build a huge company.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to, even this podcast, I want people to hear it.
Yeah.
Because I have interesting conversations with interesting people, and I believe there's much to be gained.
Yeah.
And I will do things to grow it because I come from a business background, but that was never
the intention.
So I didn't start off going, okay, what's my monetization policy?
Yeah.
I started with, I've always wanted to start a podcast. I've got a book coming out. Somebody suggested, why don't you do a podcast around the book? And I said, actually, for years, I've been wanting to do a podcast. So I'll use the book as the reason to get off my butt and actually do this thing finally.
Yeah.
Because I procrastinated for like 8-9 years.
Yeah.
And then I just started it. And I'm like, I'll figure out its purpose as I go. I mean, I know that I want to have conversations with people that I consider interesting, who I feel can share in sharing their lives and their journeys. Anybody listening has something to gain, just like I gain from every interaction that happens. And yeah, that's it. And as it grows, as it does things, yeah, it's cool. But yeah, I'm not looking to. I was watching a video the other day. There's a couple of podcasts that I kind of half follow, and not, they're doing huge events with thousands of people in the room, and I'm like, yo, man, that feels like work.
Yeah.
Like, I do want to go out and one of my earlier, I've done 2 episodes where it's a conversation in front of people. Like, I do want to do that.
Yes.
But it'll still be intimate.
There's so many trains of thought around this, right? Because a lot of people say begin with the end in mind, like what result do you want? But then you get other people that say fall in love with the process and the results will come. And I think you're probably the latter.
You are listening to the Listen to Your Footsteps podcast, a podcast in which I chat to Africans from a cross-section of society and sectors, including art, culture, design, business, and creativity, to name a few. I delve into their journeys, the decisions they've taken to get to where they are, how they do what they do, and everything in between. Essentially, we go wherever the conversation takes us. Mine is, there's certain things I've always wanted to do. Over the years, in my life, I've just been like, there's certain things I've literally always wanted to do. And I've reached the point where it's like, I'll just do them. There's things that I do to...
I love that.
There's things that I do to pay my bills. There's work that I do, and sometimes, until Ayob started helping me with this, the podcast was erratic because I was doing everything. But when my client work came up, or I got busier with client work, unfortunately that took precedence.
Correct.
Because I was doing everything on my own. So now that I have at least a support system, it's easier to be consistent. But the main premise was, I've always been fascinated by podcasts. So I wanted to start a podcast like 2013, 2014. I was having conversations around it.
That was like the beginning of it.
And in those days, like just trying to find a place with the equipment, everything was just...
The barrier to entry was high.
Yeah, there was just friction at every stage along the way. Right? And so there's over the last couple of years, that's the approach I've taken. It's like, okay, I know what's looking after because I need to look after my family.
Correct.
And I like nice things. At least I like some nice things. But, okay, so as long as I have that covered, I have room, I have time to explore other things and try other things.
It makes me think of... I don't know why it came to mind as you were talking, like there was a movie, it must have been in the late 90s or somewhere around there, called Pump Up the Volume. And they had this regional radio station and out of the back of a van, and they just broadcast to within a certain radius. And they started something, and then obviously they got a little bit more listeners and started going, and they went a little bit more mainstream. And then they realized that isn't actually, the purpose was lost. And I think with you being so very clear on your purpose, you want to have interesting conversations. You want to add value to whoever listens to this. I think that purpose will sustain whatever else it comes from it.
Yeah. And also, when we're talking about scaling, it's like also lifespan. Like, I don't assume that this is going to go on forever. I may wake up one day and go,
nah.
Yeah, we've had a good run. I have ideas for other... for example, podcasts and video stuff, and I may do them all concurrently. I may drop one and do another. There's going to be a bunch that I won't do.
Yeah.
Because there's at least I have a finite amount of time in this physical realm. And so it's natural that I won't get to do everything.
I think that if you consider yourself as an explorer and a creative, the medium that you explore that in, and you're a wordsmith, you love communicating, and you craft them in a different way. So the medium, whether it's on video or over the sound waves or on paper or on a screen, is still an expression of that core of who you are. So I think the one might lead to the other, which is great. We were just talking, Ayob and I, earlier, and saying, what about the vlog aspect, the video aspect? And it's like, yeah, that will come, or we'll see how it goes. And I think that's also amazing because the world is not a cookie cutter place.
Yeah.
You never know where you're going to end up. So if you explore something and something comes from it and you're like, I'm going to ride this wave, great. I was chatting to someone on Twitter the other day about the 15 minutes of fame. A lot of the people from the Olympics became famous who came second or third or really crashed and burned. And how are they going to do something with that 15 minutes of fame that they now have? And some of them will do something, and some of them are like, that's not what drives me, what the core is. And that was an interesting conversation. And I think with you, from what I get, is that you want to just explore your avenues of expression, and then whatever comes from it, the result that comes from it is you're going to celebrate it. You're going to be like, no, I'm good.
So how do you navigate? I mean, you're talking about your wife Kim being highly pregnant when you're graduating from MBA.
Yeah.
And she's also in the creative space. How do you then navigate like raising and maintaining a family with the sometimes unpredictability of your chosen industries?
Priorities. So I have a very clear vision in some aspects of my life. And one of them is that it's almost, we spoke about scale. Somebody used that as a reference. I would like to contribute to a better world. And to have a better world, you need to have better countries, better provinces, better communities, better families. And then you've got to be a better person. So my small contribution to the world is I've got to keep my family strong and adding something positive to the world as opposed to something negative. So having that as a core, it's like whatever else I do has to make sure that it moves in that direction. So I have a clear vision, want to work on my family, want to work on building good kids and adding something positive to the world. The work and my passions and the things that I want to do has to support that. So it's a hierarchy. Family first, then work and creative expression and so forth, and then other things after that.
I seen you posted a day in my life. I don't know if it was on LinkedIn or something.
Satire.
Yeah, because I saw the hashtags. I saw at the end. I actually went through it and I saw it, and I saw a hashtag, satire, hashtag sarcasm. But how much of that? Because there was a lot of wake up early in the morning, do my meditations, have my cup of tea, take the kids to school, come back, stare off in the distance and think for like 20 minutes, do my thinking for 20 minutes. There were parts of it that I'm working towards getting in my life, like having my life operate that way. So for you, how much of that was true? Which in that is true for today, or is something that you're working towards?
Wow. One of my ultimate goals is to live on a lake in a cabin in the woods, right? And a lot of staring off into the distance would form part of that. A lot of mindfulness and just slowing life down a little bit. As far as that post is, the reason I wrote it is because all these gurus on how to be productive online, they always 5 a.m. club, gotta get up. So it was a bit of a jive at that, because some people operate better. If you read up on Jeff Bezos, he likes to tinker in the morning and have a cup of tea and then read the paper, and he really starts getting going at about 9 o'clock in the morning. So some people are more productive at night. So there's no one size fits all. From my perspective, it's seasonal. There are seasons where I read a heck of a lot. There are seasons where I consume so much. There are seasons where I produce a lot. And there are seasons where I sleep a lot. and seasons where I don't. And life throws that at you. But as far as, you've got to add fuel to the fire. So I always say that if I'm not reading, I do feel depleted. I do feel empty. You can't, as they say, pour from an empty cup. I do not have a routine where my only routine is around my kids. Got to take them to school at a certain time, got to get them to sports or activities at a certain time. That's about it. Couple of other appointments that are non-negotiables for me, but that's very few and far between. The rest of it is when I switch my mind, and that's what dancing has helped me with. Say, for example, under the ballroom genre, there are 5 dances and you have to do them in quick succession. So you have to switch from I'm portraying this story and this character and have an instantaneous switch into now I'm performing this and I'm taking on that role. And I do that in my work where I can be the sports dad and be like, there, support. But when that email comes through and I have to really focus, I can switch very quickly into that mindset. And that's helped me a lot with the erratic nature of my schedule, but my mind has been trained to switch and between different roles.
What is your work now?
My work now.
The proverbial Jobo question. So what do you do?
I am in a transition phase where, as I said, I like to be challenged. So in the dance industry, for what I wanted to achieve, I've achieved, I think, everything. So I want a new challenge. So instead of only being in the dance industry, I wanted to spread that a bit wider, hence the hashtag change from the dance guy to creative guy. I've always had an interest in design, in sound, in digital design, creating beautiful experiences with events. And so I love the advertising industry. I love advertising. I don't know about the industry so much. So I'm transitioning into that and I'm positioning myself to do more work in events and advertising, understanding branding a lot more. And because I'm quite organized, I like the operational aspect because of the organization behind it. So I'm in the transition phase moving towards that.
Are you still running your dance school?
Yeah.
Classes?
Dance culture.
Because you guys were doing dance at my children's school.
Yeah, still there.
Still there.
This past week, the whole of last week, I had a team at the World Championships.
Oh, brilliant.
In UK during the riots. So lovely. So I still have the dance school. And funny you mentioned that because there was a transition into that from being primarily ballroom and Latin focused to the street dance aspect that has really taken over now because you have to fish where the fish are, you know?
Yeah.
So the youth want that and people have an appetite for that. So we're providing for that. And now we've developed those core people and some of them to go off into the more professional industry and they're going off into different creative aspects because out of dancing, I mean, you can go into choreography, you can go into creative directing, you can go into events, you can go into online because it really allows you to explore different aspects of finding yourself. So I have dance culture and out of that, I've got creative culture where I do the choreography and creative directing and all those things. So yeah, I dabble, but I think that the dance studio is the core at this point in time.
Do your children dance?
My kids do, yeah. They both. It's a really the eldest it's a really important part of her life. She does ballet and hip hop dancing. She wants to do Latin, and I'm like, in time, you can't do everything at the same time. So they did really well at provincials, or going to nationals in a couple of months. And then the youngest is the hip hop dancing is a little bit more of an outlet, but she's on an Olympic program in gymnastics.
Okay.
So I spend 16 hours a week, or she spends 16 hours a week training at age 8, which is a big investment. But then I always try to give context as well. The reason why we invest time into taking you, into allowing you to do these things, and what are you gaining from it? Again, what you put in is what you get out. So when they do the extra training at home, like I've just done 16 hours this week, I'm like, yeah, but if you put in a couple of hours extra, it makes you stand out. So I try and teach substantiating lessons through what they're doing and what we expose them to. And
do they have understanding of your context? in terms of your career and what you've done?
I don't think the time yet has come to have the conversation, but they know Dad has a dance studio. They know Dad sits on his computer and there's all this music and visuals coming out.
I asked that because with a cousin of mine, my nieces heard me on radio, and they were all excited. Yeah, and I was like, do they know who their father is? It's like the father's been in the industry for over 20 years, and transitioned from in front of camera to behind the scenes and does big stuff. And I'm like, they're excited because I just went on to a radio show to talk about cigars for like 10 minutes because they were looking for content and somebody came across an article I wrote versus, what their father does. And it's like, they have no concept. And when my niece phoned my daughter to say, your dad's on radio, she was downstairs and she's like, no, he's upstairs. He's on radio, he's just chilling. And also my children discovering videos of me doing poetry because it's not part of their life at all, and I don't do it anymore.
But your kids are a little bit older, so I think you can have those conversations. Say, you know what, let's spend an afternoon. It's like I spend afternoons going through old family albums and just giving them an idea. This is who your grandfather was. This is where you come from. This is your aunt, that kind of thing. So I think when they're a little bit older and understand, I'm going to be like, so do you have any questions for me?
They're teenagers. They really don't care.
What's the next YouTube short?
They really don't care what the father did, whatever. I always say, and I've said it on this podcast, and it's one of my lines, like a couple of years back, I came to the realization / decision that it's their world. It's no more my world.
Sure.
And it needed to be, it was an epiphany because my work had me in the public sphere for a long time. And this idea of relevance seemed important. People ask me, how do you stay relevant? And I was plugged into stuff. And, one day I woke up and I went through an experience and I was like, actually, it's not my world anymore. Like, it's their world. And, it's interesting for me how in, say, 7-8 years, I've gone from walking to certain spaces and people know who I am to everybody being clueless.
And you like it.
And me being also, okay, and also my being clueless about, who's who.
They are, yeah.
And so because of that, it's, my son is 17 now. It's like, yo, man, it's his world. And that's all good.
That's an interesting, that's saying, I'm going to have to ruminate on that a little bit.
But like I said, they also, my kids are also teenagers.
Yeah.
And well into, at least my son is well into kind of his teenage years. My daughter just hit 13.
I'm going to come to you for advice when I have 3 women in my house who are synchronized in their cycles.
That I can't help you with. I have 2 women and 2 men.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Like one of the things that I have had a conversation with, because they ask what my friend does with the music and all that. And I was explaining the concept of royalties to them. And they like that. And I say, and so one of the affirmations that we say every morning is, I create value. That's one of them. And we explore that. We explore a different value every day. And I think it's such a nice way to frame it, is that you have to create value. So it's not only for you, it's for the world and for people. And if it has value, it can perpetuate. So that's where the royalties thing comes in. So I'm trying to instill a little bit of a mindset with them and just steer them in a certain direction, so that it's not just the onus of it ends with you. You can create something outside of you that has value, like your book, like this podcast, which can in perpetuity create value to people. So that's kind of something that I'm trying to get them to think about, particularly because they love dancing and gymnastics and so forth. And I'm like, that ends with you. You can't give that as an inheritance to someone else. So it's balancing that it's my world and I'm trying to impose some values and things on them.
Yeah.
But still, it's their world. What are you thinking of in order to consciously create the future that you want?
I mean, it's not contradict you, but this conversation that we've had so far, right? And we're talking about exploring dance or gymnastics, etc. It kind of ends with them. And I would counter that slightly, because in having shared your thoughts and your journey, there is a legacy to you. So dance hasn't ended with you, right? It hasn't been an exercise where you have reaped the benefits, and that's where the line is. Literally, just in describing that journey and describing them, you have shown that actually it doesn't kind of end with that.
Yeah. Okay. So it's the lessons and who you become through it.
Look, when my father passed away, one of my great realizations, because you're dealing with grief, you're dealing with all of these things, and the conversation around legacy. And for quite a few years, I was very caught up in this idea of legacy. Like a friend of mine, and it said a lot, what will people say about you when you're gone? And that was very much a driving force. Or, what are you accumulating? What foundation are you leaving? What nest egg are you leaving? All of these things. And when my father passed away, I realized that myself and my siblings are that legacy.
Innately.
That's it. It's everything else is cool, but if I want to honor his legacy, it's about how I live my life moving forward.
For sure.
It's how I lived my life when he was alive, because it comes from his teachings, but how do I live my life moving forward?
Yeah.
And on the flip side, there's a book I read called, 4,000 Weeks? This guy called Oliver Berkman wrote a book, and he said, if you live to 81, you'll have lived for 4,000. Is it 4,000 weeks or 400 weeks? I can't remember that. But it's not a lot. It's not a lot when you look at it.
Yeah. Probably 4,000. Because 52 weeks, 400 would be 8 years, isn't it? Just over 8 years.
Oh yeah, you did want to do accounting. I'll tell you now. But so what he talks about, it's 4,000 weeks. So if you live to 81, you'll have lived for 4,000 weeks. That's it. So if you don't make that age, then it is less. And so when he talks about that, he talks about how essentially time is finite, and you're not going to be able to do everything.
You also speak about your kids and connecting them. So legacy speaks about future, and you spend some thought. You've shared some thoughts with regards to their past, what their foundation is with your dad, home country, all of those things. Do you find that adds value to what you think about legacy? Is where you come from, your foundation?
I think to a certain extent. I'm in the mid, like you. I read, and I read and I apply. So sometimes my thinking is like evolving. I still haven't quite caught on to what I think about something, or I thought something, and then I'm reading something that's shaking it up a little bit. So I have to kind of reformulate. But knowing where you're from and knowing where your people are from is important to me. And it's important to me because I come from different cultures, and I was raised in different cultures, and I live in different cultures. So the journey of finding myself, the journey in going kind of, I am all these components, and it's fine to have all these different elements. When I was in university, people used to say, you can't sit on the fence. You have to pick a side, black or white. And at some stage, I got to the point where it's like, actually, I can. I can decide.
The illusion of choice.
Yeah, I can decide where I fall. So no, I'm not going to pick a side.
Yeah.
Just because you feel I should pick a side. So having gone through that journey and it having impacted and affected me in different ways, some for the positive, some for the negative. With my children, it was always important for me for them to also recognize and have that understanding of where we're from and the things that have, brought us to where we are today. And the fact that it is diverse, with diversity being the one of the catch words nowadays, right? But being comfortable in that, and being comfortable in the potpourri, in the mishmash, right? Yeah, and so probably that's why that's always been important to me, because it's also enabled me to find an element of balance and grounding. Because before that, everything was very up in the air, because outside world says you're this, you're that, you're that. This is where you fit in.
Yeah, to label you.
Yeah, and then I'm kind of going, yeah, I kind of fit there, but I also kind of fit there, and I kind of like that, and I'm influenced by that. So I can't go that way. I can't go that way. One of my first realizations was, as an 18, 19-year-old, saying, if I decided I was a particular race, and if I bought into that construct, which I've later learned, constructs and that sort of stuff. At that time, I didn't have that thinking.
Yeah.
At that time, it was really like, okay, if I say I'm black, what am I saying about my German family? Because I am of them like I am of my Ghanaian family. And my mother was my mother. So if I select this side, am I renouncing or denouncing that side?
Correct.
And so, yeah, that's why I guess that's important to me.
And I mean, that's been a topic of conversation in recent times with what makes you South African. What makes
yeah.
So a lot of things.
There's a lot of stuff in there, and I try to, I haven't weighed in on that.
Yeah.
Only thing I thought was my children.
Yeah.
Because my children were born here, they're South African, but I'm not.
That's what I was about to say. Your kids, it's not always only where you're from, it's who are you from? Who are you born out of? So
and the citizenship, so the citizenship I carry, I was not born into. I acquired it up, I got it when I was like 15. Yeah.
So that also affects identity or placement if you wanted to.
Which is why I've kind of got to the point where it's like, okay, this is my thread, and these other things I don't really worry about. And then trying to share that thinking with my children is for them to have some kind of balance.
So next month is September, and it's Heritage Month.
Yeah.
So I have this ongoing debate with my wife of, what are the kids going to dress up at school for Heritage Day?
Springbok jersey.
And that's a good conversation to have as well, right? I'm like, no, let's color in their front teeth, Or do we go with the Xhosa side?
It's not racism when you are from the people and you push a stereotype.
That's what I always think of. They ask a lot, how come we don't speak like our cousins that are in Cape Town? I'm like, no, man, you can't talk like that. Those are conversations. Also, not only where you're coming from and who you're coming from. And we spoke about legacy, and they are raised in Joburg. So they are proper city kids, city slickers, and westernized, if I can put it that way. But we obviously work hard with regards to connecting them to their Africanness, consciously. And I try to frame it as a positive, that yes, we are straddled between certain things, but why can't we embrace everything? You can be progressive, but still have roots.
Absolutely.
So I love that about being colored,
Yeah, I'm married to a colored woman, and so culturally we're very different with my in-laws and stuff, but you kind of find the common ground, right? You find the common thread, and it is about being able to embrace, the different aspects, and with us, with the kids, whenever they they have to dress up like Heritage Day, and it's like you must bring in food. And then the one year I just sent my son in with like wurst and sauerkraut and potatoes because it's the easiest thing. Like to make a curry was like hard work.
Yeah.
Ghanaian food was hard work. And then go to the German deli, you get sausages, sauerkraut, and potatoes.
Yeah.
Like it was more a function of convenience and ease than anything else, right? And so with my daughter, I mean, I'm thinking about like recently I think she was going in for, they were doing something tied to kind of heritage and stuff. And she's like, "Yo, man, where's your flag?" Because I've got a German flag in the house. I've got a Ghanaian flag in the house. But we'd moved house, so they were packed away. And she's like, "Can I get the flag? And, can I get a football jersey? Because I have
multiple,
both Germany and Ghana over the years, football jersey." And so for her, it was just a convenience. It's like, okay, they want something yellow. I know that you have a Ghanaian football jersey that's all yellow. So can I get that? Right? And then this week, she was supposed to wear a yellow T-shirt. And she found I have the Bafana kit from, I think it was
African Cup of Nations.
Africa Cup of Nations. I went to Durban with one of the brands, and I was still in magazine. I mean, we're talking like maybe 2013. And so I got the jersey, which has my name on the back.
Oh, wow.
And she was like, she needed a yellow T-shirt, and she found that. And she went to school wearing this T-shirt. It's like, okay, it's about convenience. Sometimes it's not that deep. It's not about identity
making a statement
or whatever. Yeah, no, it's just, have you got the right colors? So kind of as we start to wind down, do you still dance?
I do. I don't do it for the same reasons, and I don't do it as much or intensely as I used to. But I do find value in it just because I work with a lot of older people as well.
Okay.
And it's practical. I see the elements that they have, and I'm like, dancing just moves all the right parts. So in order to have a good quality of life as I get older, dancing is actually a great means to maintain that. So my neck, my back, all the joints, especially around the hips and stuff, dancing keeps the mobility there. So it's practical reasons. I don't get to gym. I probably gym as much as you. So that for me is a form of exercise, form of release. I get to do it with music, and it keeps my body functional. So that's one of the reasons. My main focus right now is developing the next generation. So I bark a lot of orders and make them suffer because you have to beat your body into submission.
Yeah.
And so I get them to push themselves a lot more mentally and physically and emotionally. And that's the main focus now when it comes to dancing, is to build a business around it and to develop the next generation, to hand over the baton.
Actually, closing question. Somebody said I should ask this of everyone, and I never get around to it. But who is inspiring you right now within the creative spaces? Like, who are you consuming? Who are you following? Who's just like exciting you?
Wow. My focus right now is more on the business, the creative business aspect. So I listen to a lot of content and watch a lot of content from Chris Do, The Future.
Okay, yeah.
Alex Hormozy. I like the way he's very sales and marketing and systems orientated. And I need to change my mind into that a lot more because, again, I don't want it to stop with me. It needs to filter down and I want to build an organization where I don't need to be present and hands-on as much. So that helps me with that. And then I do enjoy watching movies. So when I watch movies, I don't only watch it to switch off. I do, like, if I watch a 300, I watch it multiple times. If I watch a Dark Knight Returns, I'll watch it multiple times and I'll watch it for different reasons. So I wouldn't say they are specific people, but I do watch movies in order to see why did they shoot it that way? Why is that lighting that way? What is this camera angle trying to tell in the story? How are they positioning the characters? So I ask those things because it kind of filters into my library of knowledge so that when I do art direction for a product, like if we position it this way, this is what it's going to say about it. When I craft words together for a social media post even, it's like, this is what it will mean if you use this word instead of that word. So the creativity, I think, just filters and meshes all together, comes inside of me, and then what comes out hopefully will be something that's useful. And so the people, to answer your question, that I listen to are mostly those two at the moment. And then I consume a lot of movies, but with intention.
Okay. What do you do to unwind?
Me, I sit in nature.
Do you unwind?
I try to. I sit in nature, and I listen to very soothing and calming music. As I mature, I want to get into carpentry. I prefer working with something that has life, like wood, and I like the Japanese way of doing it. You know, I think it's kintsugi or something.
No, Japanese way of doing it.
Yeah.
Everything is just...
It's not using other materials like nails and things. It's how you put the wood. It has to fit perfect together. It's how you choose it. So it's creative, but it's practical. It's with your hands. I just love it. So that's something I want to get into. And even like bonsai and those kinds of things.
So that I do.
Yeah.
I started with bonsai about 2 years ago.
Okay.
Although my first 2 trees died. So
shame. You can take them to a doctor, you know that, right?
I have a bonsai guy.
Okay.
I did a course with him. He stays not far from me.
All right.
So I need to pot my two trees because spring is coming. And then wire them and prune them, and I'll send you the details.
Yeah, please.
So I get that. I get the wanting to explore.
Yeah, and just slow down a little bit. So I'm at that phase in my life where you almost reassess where you want to go. Have you been forced into this? I'm busy reading or rereading 1984, George Orwell, dystopian future and all that, right? And just ruminating on that and thinking about it, like, is this the life you chose or was it chosen for you? So I'm at a stage in my life where I can actually consciously choose the direction and where I want to go. And I'm not rushing it because I don't need to. And so with all of these things that I want to do, I'm just taking some time just to sit with it. And I do sit in nature. I sit around water. I sit amongst trees. I sit in the sun and I just sit. And that's how I unwind.
Beautiful place to be. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Cool, man. The Listen to Your Footsteps podcast is produced by Zebra Culture. If you have ideas of what we can do better, people you'd like us to have a conversation with, or would just like to share a thought, you can email me on info@zebraculture.com. To check out past episodes, go to choreographer.com/podcasts. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share with a friend. If you'd like to get a copy of the book, Listen to Your Footsteps, check out choreographer.com/book. There are details on the various spaces it's available at. I'd also appreciate it if you could leave a review or comment wherever you listen to your podcasts. Finally, there's the Zebra Culture by Choreographer newsletter, where on a weekly basis, I share a curated list of articles, playlists, videos, etc. that have caught my attention. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed having it.